So, what is culture? Culture is two things: the totality of socially transmitted behavior patterns, etc. And so that is culture in the large sense, the culture of a whole country or the general idea of what we do. In the second definition, culture is smaller, and culture can be as small as a town or a family or a country or even a social group. If you've taken sociology, you know that social groups have certain norms of behavior. You can think of culture as partly the things that we can and cannot say. Culture is so ingrained that we often don't recognize it. It's invisible to us. Before the 1700s, individuals were not individuals as we think of them today, nor did they think of themselves as we think of ourselves today. Individuals belonged, number one, to God, and number two, to the state, meaning the king or queen of whatever country they were in, and I'm speaking of European/Western countries here. Body and soul, people belong to the state. The state and God were intimately tied because of the ingrained cultural belief in an absolute monarchy. If you've taken a history class that included the study of the British monarchy and the Middle Ages to the Renaissance, you're familiar with that term. If you're not, what it means is that the king and queen, the king or queen, I should say, were put there by God. So what exactly does that mean, that the king or queen were put there by God? What does that mean to the people? What that means is that the people belong to God. The state or the kingdom was put on earth by God. Therefore, the state is God acting on earth. So if you think about where that goes, all the citizens of a country are subject to the state, and the state is subject to God, then anything the state does, by definition, is right and just, no matter what it is, because it's God acting on earth. So consider that every act done by a subject of the crown was always done in their honor. It was done to honor God, and it was done to honor the crown. For example, the foundation of Jamestown, James, named after the current king. And the land of Virginia, of course, was named for Queen Elizabeth, who was known as the Virgin Queen. And they taught this to their little children too. This is a little child's textbook, and notice the role of the king in the letter K, and no man of blood, which tells the child basically that the king is next to God and almost is God. No man of blood, not like the child, but like something and someone otherworldly. Now, the people at this time who were contemporaries of John Smith and people who went to Jamestown and were sold on the colonial experience were also contemporaries of playwrights William Shakespeare. They were also contemporaries of Christopher Marlowe, and they may have seen plays written by either of them which tended to be tragedies, and they tended to be bloody. This is a model of Shakespeare's Globe Theatre that was rebuilt in 1997 to be as close as possible to the original. And this is what it looked like inside the globe. So you might ask yourself, what does Shakespeare and Marlowe and the Globe Theater have to do with people not owning their own bodies? Well, one of the reasons why I relate these two is that people often went to the theater to see tragedies. And I'll explain what tragedies are in the next slide. But there are theatrical tragedies, and there are the tragedies that are equally theatrical and acted out on a public stage, only in real life, in the form of executions. And yes, I mean the type of executions where someone is killed for a crime against the state.